Oh, hello, thank you everyone who is joining us today. As I said, please feel free to jump in the chat and to say hi. And welcome to our first future-proof webinar brought to you by Edge of Search, Firewire Digital, and also today we've got Precis. And my name is Shana. I'm the head of community and field marketing at Firewire Digital, and I'm also the co-founder of Edge of Search, which is a unique, if I don't say so myself, search marketing conference in Newcastle, New South Wales. Guest speaker today is Kristina Bergwall. She is the SEO and AEO Director at Precis, where she works to empower people and drive change in our industry. She's doing an absolutely top-notch job of that. I first saw Kristina at brightonSEO last year, where she was a speaker for the October 2025 event. And she was presenting on SEO collaboration, and all the while seeing through that, I was like, I have to talk to this person. I have to meet her. And we met late last year virtually and talked about our shared vision for search and SEO and all the things that we think are going to happen in the future. And super exciting, and I've been wanting to get her on this webinar for so long. It was just waiting on me to get my act together, and I finally did it. So I'm so happy you could all make it. Hello, Morgana. Thank you so much for joining us. Some quick FYIs before I hand over the reins. Please feel free to, as I said, use the chat, share comments or thoughts with us throughout. And we also have a Q&A section you'll see up the top there. You can add your questions for Kristina, and we'll try and get through those at the end. Or if you're a bit shy, you can always send those to Kristina privately later if you would like. So, Kristina, floor is all yours.
Amazing. Thanks, Shanavi, for that introduction. And let's get going. We're going to talk about why you should stop chasing rankings and build visibility systems. Before we talk about that, I'm going to just tell you guys who I am so you know who you're listening to. Like Shanavi did a little bit of background there, but this is how I like to introduce myself. That SEO is my craft and leadership is my engine and people are my strategy. And why I say this is that I've been working with SEO for the last 14 years, so that is what I know and what I do. But what really revs me up, what gets me going, is working with leadership, and I do that through people that I lead in SEO. This QR code is just to be able to follow me on LinkedIn. Please do, and like we just said now, if you want to just message me privately on there. If you have specific questions and want to chat to me about this, please feel free to do so. And a little bit more background into me and what I've done, just quickly, so you know a bit more about me. This picture here is me teaching in a classroom of loads of 14-year-olds. My background is in teaching, and that's what I have a degree in. And I like to take this with me into everything that I do, and when I work, as a manager, and work with my team, and in everything I do like this, in webinars. I love communicating things to other people to make them understand. So hopefully that will be visible today. But you might be wondering about my accent. Obviously, I am Swedish. I am from Sweden, but I do sound a little bit British still. It's because I moved to Leeds in 2011 to do some of my English degree. So I lived there, and I just by chance got into SEO, worked for a couple of different agencies, and then I moved to London for a couple of years to open up a London office there, which was very exciting. But if anyone have lived there, you'll know that you can only do London for so long. Well, that's how I feel anyway. And then I moved back to Leeds because it's a lovely place to be in the UK. But then eventually Brexit happened, and then COVID came, and I was just like, I'm done with this. So I moved back after 10 years, back to Sweden in 2020, after the first lockdown. And now I'm truly back in Sweden. I work here in Stockholm for Precis, with my 2 kids here and my husband. Not going anywhere anytime soon, but I will be going to Australia soon to visit. I just said earlier that, I want to wait a couple of years so my kids are a little bit older so we can all enjoy it properly. So that's me. And like Sean said, why this is happening is because, as you saw me on Brighton SEO last year in October, where I talked about SEO collaboration, or why collaboration in SEO is what is the thing that can drive results. And I used what I call the collaboration blueprint to explain a few examples of like how this worked. And the blueprint itself was about, identifying the stakeholders to work with and collaborate with, and to speak to them in a way that makes sense, and then packaging the data and the insights that we had, piloting things together, and then scaling and sharing. So I talked a lot about collaboration and why that is important in SEO right now. But after that, I've taken this idea a little bit further, which is what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about SEO rather as an organizational design, going beyond just polite collaboration. We're going to talk about what successful SEO in the age of AI then looks like within this, talk about visibility gates and what that is, and operational success factors. So it's not going to follow this very clear structure, but I am going to talk about all of these things throughout the presentation. But I just want to take a step back and think about why. What's the goal? Why are we even talking about this? Just to be super clear. And I think we're all here today because we're after the same thing. We want to find answers for how we can make sure we do the right things now and in the future to ensure that we see great results in organic search, or whatever search will look like, right? It will look like this. That's a tiny little, great results, right? That's what we're after. But here's the vision then, to make brands visible by default. Just like some organizations are innovative by design, what I'm going to be preaching about today is making organizations visible by default. And what I mean by that is that a business, is set up structurally, with processes, people, OKRs, KPIs, to keep, or for them to become the preferred brand that LLMs recommend for that brand's specific, products or services. And you might be thinking now, yeah, but that's why we have an SEO team, right? Yeah, sure. That is obviously why. And you might have an in-house SEO team, or you have an agency maybe that's been tasked with ensuring organic traffic to your website. We all know what's happening with organic traffic right now. So that team has now also been asked to ensure organic results in an AI-driven search reality, which I would argue is why then we need to stop chasing rankings and start building visibility systems. So bear with me and let's go through it. So why should we really stop chasing rankings? Well, because rankings does not equal visibility anymore. Just take Google results. We've got an AI overview, smack bang, at the top, taking up all the real estate. And what about your customers? Are they actually still Googling your services, or are they actually chatting to, ChatGPT about a problem that your products could fix? So that's great. Maybe we just focus all our energy on getting visibility, right? Where our customers are. Perfect. But users might get their answers in AI search or AI overviews, and then they never click onto your website. We all know click-through rates are plummeting. But fine, you still get some traffic to your website, but if that traffic isn't relevant or, meets the user's expectations of you as a brand, it doesn't lead to conversions, If the user experience your brand, or the user's experience of your brand doesn't match or align with what they've experienced of your brand in that conversation with AI before they hit your website, they probably won't convert. If you're even in that answer, that is, and not experiencing that invisible churn, if you wish. But then what should we care about, we're still working with SEO, AEO, GEO, whatever you guys call it, But SEO is becoming a whole lot more to do with users and AI's experience of your brand across the web, right? So brand authority, experience, and consistency becomes so much more important. So where does organizational design come into it? I mentioned that, and we're going to talk about this. Well, that consistent brand visibility can't be achieved in just a silo. It requires redesigning the systems that governs how information are created, validated, and distributed across the organization. So that's how visibility becomes structural and how organizational design becomes the answer. But why really? How did we get here? I think we should zoom out a little bit. Because there's been this fundamental shift in how we use the internet, right? Who's old enough to remember Alta Vista? I am, unfortunately. But the internet, the touch point, like how we use the internet has changed dramatically, just to going on specific sites, then having search engines, amazing, and then got used to social, we got used to the scrolling. And now we're at an age where the internet is a conversation, right? That's a drastic shift in how we approach the internet, how we use the internet rather. So why should we then not consider a fundamental shift in how we approach being found on the internet? And I believe that companies need to drastically shift the way they work and how they operate to be successful in AI search. And I think that we as leaders within SEO have the power to really rise to this challenge and do something with it. So that's kind of where we are, but where are we then heading? Because there's no sign of the future becoming anything other than 100% AI based. We're at this stage now, it's not just a touch point, it's becoming more dominant. And, ChatGPT might be slowing down a little bit, and whatever, but Google is soon just AI mode, right? And we're all shopping through agents any moment now. And so this is why we're talking about this. There is no time to waste. And just to hammer this point home a little bit more, in this fundamental shift right now, that this is just how, it's about search behavior changing. You used to type in like a few keywords into Google, but now, generative AI platforms were typing in 20 plus words, if not more. So the question is, if your customers are having these conversations, are you mentioned in them, And if not, what do we do about it? So let's get a little bit more tactical for a moment. I know this is there's a lot of text in here. Don't worry about it. Don't read it. It's just, I'm just making a point here with this Venn diagram, because our tactics have changed. And I made this diagram together with my team. And basically we kept moving things around. We're like, no, this is AEO. And then we're like, no, this is kind of both. And I was like, no, this is pure SEO. But is there anything such thing anymore? So, but we made this just to make it really, clear that search is now partly conversational. Which means that we need to optimize for the conversation as well. And you could also view AEO, if you want to call it that, or GEO, as more, upper funnel. The purpose being a little bit more about driving brand awareness than regular good old SEO. And you can say that, discovery and commercial investigation is now AEO. But regardless of how you want to define it, we need to think about the conversation here. So back to the point now, why we should stop chasing rankings. And we need to start optimizing for the topics that we want to own, the intent of the users and, the conversations that are happening within search. And we need to start writing for agents as well as humans, obviously, and then measure what we're doing differently. Since, actual traffic can be sparse, tracking conversations makes more sense, for example. And we need to work, towards owning the answers in our field and stop, or rather, start building strong brand authority for LLMs and users. So there's a lot of shifts here. I know there's a lot of text on here. But the question really that we're at now is, can your SEO team alone do this? Actually, the question really is, should your SEO team alone be doing this? I want to go back to this Venn diagram, and I know it's already chaotic, but I've added more text on here. But because what I see when I look at this is all sorts of competencies, specialisms, departments playing a vital part in what visibility means now, even at at a tactical level. So let's look at this in a different way, just to try and make this point a bit more clear. This is, by the way I look at the internet, it's this dark blue universe. This is a visualization of my mind. But when we look at your brand in AI search, we have so many different places here where your brand story lives, both your own, your website and earned content about you, with different sentiments and all of this in real time is what AI knows about your brand. The LLMs reflect the clarity, consistency, and the structure of this information that they ingest in all these different touch points. So when this messaging, entity signals, or product data is really fragmented, visibility will also be fragmented. But when the message is, consistent and clear, LLMs will be sure for when to recommend you. And just because I've got a background in teaching and I'm very passionate about making accommodations for everyone, some people learn by, visual input or listening. Some people are better reading. But let me just read this quote out to you because I think this makes the point really clearly. And this is from a recent study from Stacker about, how earned media distribution expands AI visibility. But basically, it says this. When a story lives only on a brand site, the model has just one place to encounter it. When that same story appears across multiple reputable publisher domains through earned distribution, the model encounters it in more context, which strengthens the overall signal around the information. This broad, multi-domain presence increases the likelihood of that story will surface in AI-generated answers. So I hope that made it really clear. So with all of this in mind then, in more practical terms, we're talking about all these different disciplines working together, right, to ensure visibility, creating this scenario where SEO then goes from more of a tactical channel to a more, strategic infrastructure layer. But what does that even look like? Well, at brightonSEO a few months ago, I kind of argue that, collaboration is really at the core what is driving results right now, making sure that we all work together and to achieve that. But I would actually argue right now that, that's not enough. We need to forget about these silos completely and just work as one to create this visibility infrastructure. So this is what it looks like now. We're just one big team, right? But where do we even start? Let's just summarize where we are now before we move on. So it's not just about SEO or AEO or how you want to define it. It's how we work together, collaborate, but it's not just about how we work together or collaborate, all the relationships or, all that kind of stuff. But it's about how the organization is structured and what we do then to change it. And really, for me, it's twofold. It's both obviously the kind of process revelation in a sense of how we work and how we work together. But then there's the other thing that businesses, things that businesses need to put into place for those processes to work, some more structural things. But let's start with the process before we move on to that bit. And this is where I want to introduce visibility gates when we talk about process and how we work. And this is really a way to think about a content process. And think about your content moving through a high pressure pipe. And at each joint, this, a gate filters out the noise and creates an output that is pure. And this is what it can look like. I just want to say reality is, this can be very multi-layered and look very different and have other types of gates. But the point here is that regardless of what stage or development, or department you have, it doesn't really matter. It's about passing the specific or passing the specific gates that make sense to you with the relevant people, asking the relevant questions. And it depends on maybe like maturity level. You might actually recognize when we go through this that you have some of these things into place. You might have like a good collaboration within some teams where this happened really smoothly, like based maybe from an idea, to an actual page on the site, sieving through both SEO, UX, for example. That's working really great for you. Great, you might have some of these pieces in place already. But what takes this to the next level is ensuring the organization is designed at its core to make this automatic. It's not like a nice exception or just an example of great collaboration. This becomes automatic. Let's just go through these. The technical gate speaks for itself, I think. Like if the page template has like valid schema, making sure all the new implementations can be processed easily by LLMs, that's a check. The brand signal gate is there to filter for, ensuring that the copy aligns with like core entities, using the right terminologies, for example, not to confuse LLMs about your brand. The accessibility and readability gate is there really to make sure that the content is structured for AI and how it retrieves information. So, it could be things like, instead of just using normal headings, just using the questions people ask as titles. The authority and the deduplication gate is where, it's there to ensure that content is building on existing knowledge. Think about your knowledge graph, It's there to not confuse the AI. We talked about that consistency, seeing your brand as, that consistent source of truth. Lastly, on here, I have the localization gate. I know this is obviously mainly relevant if you're an international brand, but here again, it's about that consistency across countries, literally making sure that nothing is lost in translation and that, the brand information is aligns across regions is also very important. So this here serves as an example of what, internal processes for content creation, can look like if we adapt visibility gates. And for this to work, we looked at the different departments that you could have. It doesn't, we can't group it within these specific departments that we have. We need to set a specific mission here with finding the right people and the right skills associated to be able to move through these gates. We talk about skills in a minute as well. So that's the concept of the visibility gates. But what's going to enable this now, like I mentioned, is the kind of structural things you need in place to make this happen. So I just call them the organizational success factors. So I've identified 3 areas to talk about to make it a little bit digestible, hopefully, to go through this, because I know there's a lot of information now at once, and I know I speak relatively fast as well. The first one, we'll actually just go through this in detail. So we have the first one here, which I'm going to speak about, which is the ownership, accountability part of it, really important. Then we're going to talk about mindset and skill sets, and then we're going to talk about measurements and results. So the first one with ownership and accountability. This is something that I'm really passionate about. Clear responsibilities, expectations, and KPIs can never be underestimated for any successful business. This is a given. And I'm really passionate about this because I've seen firsthand how working how businesses can tie the individual OKRs to their main OKRs can be super effective. And it sounds quite simple to do this, making sure that everyone's individual OKRs reflect where the business is planning on going. But this is something that building, visibility first organizations, if you wish, is really key. I've actually created an example here. That's why there's a block of text here. And I thought I'm going to read it out to you again. Just the teacher in me want to do that. Just to make it really clear. I think this is going to be helpful. So it's transitioning from media relations to entity authority. So securing the brand's position as a single source of truth for AI models by aligning all external communications with core entity signals. And then we have key result 1, ensure 100% of press releases and executive thought leadership pieces pass through a clustering filter. And that's using standardized entity terminology to prevent linguistic drift. And we got key result 2 here, shift 30% of the media mix towards high citation publications, outlets that are frequently indexed and cited by primarily sources by LLMs. I think you get the point here. Like key result 3 is achieve a 20% increase as brand as a source. These reflect the visibility we want to see in AI, right? But it's still PR. I hope that potentially makes it a little bit more clear then how we can use that accountability, ownership in the specific gate for visibility that we need when it comes to PR. The next point I wanted to talk about then is the, really it is hiring the right people, right? So I've hired many people in my career, and I've also had to let quite a few people go. And from what I've seen, when I reflect upon, the recent changes in our industry and where we're going, these are the traits that are becoming increasingly important. And it is adaptability, curiosity, and grit. Really, when you look at this, maybe passion is also a relevant term. I think passion is really what I used to call it back in the day. It's just like we need people with passion, right? And I used to actually work for an agency called Zeal back in the UK for a long time. And it's because we thought it was important that people were sellers to really, be passionate about what they do. And that's what makes them successful in our industry. And I still truly believe that. And that passion is essential. But I believe that these ones are really non-negotiables right now to be successful in, a visibility by default organization. To be able to drive change with everything that comes with that, adaptability is really a must. And curiosity. I can't say enough about this because, if you're not curious to find out, to test, to fail, to win, you'll be getting nowhere in where we are right now. And then grit, leading through this change is hard work. Pure grit is needed, and a lot of coffee as well. Yeah. So I wrote an article in Search Engine Land a little while ago on this topic. And there I mentioned 2 types of SEO people we need right now. And I called them the hacker and the convincer. That's not very probably not a title you should give people. But they are like representative of the types of skills that we need to see right now. But maybe, like I said, we shouldn't call them that. This is really like the SEO, tech SEO nerd, right? And then we have the SEO sales rep. But actually, maybe that's not relevant to call them either. That's a bit on the nose. What we call them in my team is SEO specialists and SEO strategists. The core differences here, they're there for a reason. Even though everyone right now can do vibe coding, sure, we still need people who are like really technical, willing to dig deep within technical solutions. So what is becoming like a very complicated playground. And we need what we call then a strategist, which can translate all this data and insight into solutions, strategy, a roadmap, a C-suite summary, a business case. If SEO is becoming, the backbone of modern organizations, which is what I'm arguing, this role is crucial. You need to be able to be a visibility architect, have the authority internally to do so, however cheesy that title might sound. And we talked about this just before we went live today, me and Genevieve, about, the type of people skills we need now going forward. We really need to hone in on those consultancy skills, if you wish, or people skills, and how we really help the people that we work with understand what we need to do. Those convincing skills, that hence the why I called it the convincer, to really kick this off and make this work. Everything is being AI automated, and a lot of stuff that we do is being automated, but that human touch to things is going to be so much more important going forward. And maybe we have some like heads of SEO listening in or watching this recording, or maybe like SEO managers. In a visibility first organization, you might have the title CVO, Chief Visibility Officer. Fancy that. I think that's pretty cool. That brings me to the third point on measurement and results. And we haven't talked a lot about this, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but just to make the point here, this is a very important part of the backbone, obviously, to being able to measure impactful results, right? And right now, there's not too much information we can get, from Google Search Console and GA4, but we can use other things right now, right? At Precis, we use Profound and Peak that we have partnerships with, which gives us AEO insights or insights into what's happening in LLMs for our brands, and we have to just work with what we've got right now, and pivot as we go along. Hence the core skills we just talked about. But the main point here really is along the same lines as shared OKRs. Same KPIs for everyone creates a sense of, a common goal, working together. And then you can see, obviously, if we're, how we're pacing on these, if we have a shared dashboard. And really, if you have that, you're in for a much more unified approach in how you measure. But what should we be measuring then? Yeah, I think that's a question everyone's asking right now. And it depends, as the SEO specialist says. It's not very helpful, but there are a lot of things that we need to look at. And it does depend, obviously, on the industry and where you're at right now. But it can be things like channel authority, or obviously entity authority, or topical authority, if you wish. Impressions as opposed to traffic might be very relevant right now. Sentiment or sentiment share, and very important in terms of like your brand and how it's performing online. Share a model might be relevant for some. But when it comes down to it, revenue leads is really where we need to be looking at what's happening. But I think maybe a lot of you be thinking now, where do I even start with this? Sounds like a big job. Like we're going to have to change a lot of things here. Doesn't have to feel overwhelming. If it is, I think the first 90 days, you can do a real pivot here. First thing is audit your brand's, entity footprint, if you wish. Like, what's this look like? Where does your brand data live? What are people saying about you? Where is it conflicting? Do we have conflicting messages here? Then moving on to infrastructure, things we need to put into place here, right? That we talked about, maybe the visibility gaze for your business is just, putting that into your existing processes or into Jira or Asana. And then we have what I call here incentives, and that can be obviously OKRs and everything that we just talked about. But it could also be something like, I had this idea of like, you can tie 10% of the PR team's bonuses to AI citation growth, for example. I probably will kickstart some people. But let's talk about some more steps that you can take. And this is going to be my last slide, this next one, before we round off the presentation. I make it sound so simple here, just take these steps and you're on your way. Done deal. The first thing I think is super important, really, is to set a vision. If you're interested in like jumping on board this train to really start realigning how you work as a business to be ready for this very new, exciting era that we're stepping into, the vision is really important, and making sure that everyone is on board as well. That goes into the fifth point that I'll get to about radical transparency, and this is part of that, setting the vision really clearly. Why are we doing this? Get everyone on board. It's going to be important that everyone is on board, right? The second thing is take stock of talent. I don't mean this in a harsh way. Let's not get rid of like the entire business, but just make sure that you have the right people in core places, in place where they need to be with their right competencies. So, take stock of that and make sure you have the right people in the right place. And audit the gaps And this is obviously depending then on where you are and what you need to do as a business. It can be that you need new people. That might be the gap. Or the gap might be that you don't have the right tools or the data or the insights to do this. Whatever it might be, just like do a good old audit and find out like what you need. And the fourth one is shifting the KPIs, Yet again, back to the title of this, stop chasing rankings. If you're going to be measuring ourselves on rankings, then we can't go anywhere with this new vision in mind of making a visibility first organization or visible by default, We really need to think about like, what KPIs are we actually working towards to make this come to life. And then the fifth point, again, radical transparency. You're going to get no one on board this train if you don't be very transparent with what you're trying to do. I believe very strongly in that. So those are my top 5 things you can go away and try and implement right now. I hope this was helpful for you to maybe get a clearer vision of where we're going, maybe some ideas and inspiration to some things that you can start implementing now already. But the main thing I'm hoping most people take away from this is a bit of inspiration and clarity, maybe in where we actually are going, and some baby steps at least to start getting there. So thank you so much for listening for this whole, we've been going now for half an hour, more than half an hour.
Yeah. Got a few questions. Thank you, Anders, for sending those through. So what are your thoughts about Reddit and possibly engaging in topics relevant to your brand out in those kinds of platforms?
Yeah. There's a lot of chat right now about Reddit, right?
Yes.
There's been a lot of studies coming out around it, and I think we need to take everything with a little pinch of salt right now because citation rates are shifting from different places that we can see in LLMs. But I think it's important, like when I had that universe slide, with all these different touch points of your brand, Reddit, yeah, that's one of them. That can be a place where you can ensure that your brand is consistent like anywhere else online. It might make sense for some people to engage and have a proper Reddit strategy because for your industry, your niche, that is where LLMs, if you can see that in the data, are taking information from for your but if it's not relevant for you, then maybe that's not where you should put your efforts. So that's where I would go first. Look at the data. If you use any tools where you're tracking where citations are coming from in AI, like Profile and Peak that I mentioned, then that's a good place to start to find out if this is relevant for me. That's where I would start.
I think I'll wait and see how Sightbulb's Reddit account goes before I make any calls on that.
Yes, exactly. We don't have a lot of time to waste and just sit back and wait, but I think in this case, that would be very interesting to have a little look at.
Yeah. And about what you said presenting to C-suite, any concrete tips on how to explain that traffic is not the most important KPI?
Yeah. Gosh, the amount of these types of discussions we're having right now, and they're difficult. People are very set in their ways. This is an industry that's been measured by the same KPIs for a very long time. And it's very different to shift a mindset of someone in this way. I think it's to do with just like talking numbers and the bottom line a lot, because like I said in the beginning of this presentation, rankings does not equal visibility, and visibility does not equal traffic, and traffic does not equal conversions. And really, when it comes down to it, surely on a C-suite level, you're only interested in conversions, right? I mean, what else would you be interested in? So I think it's like finding the narrative to move past all of these old things and just talk about but when it comes down to it, we need to find ways to just generate the revenue or the leads, whatever it might be. And it takes a bit of time. I think this job of educating is not a one done, thing. It's a process. And I think we started having these discussions with a lot of the brands that we work with and other brands more than a year ago now, right? And some people are just about coming around to it. So it is a process, I would say.
I see it as a rebrand.
Yes.
Of SEO in many ways, and it's allowed people to lean into these discussions now because C-suite's like, oh, this is the new thing, and you're like, excellent, all the things I've been telling you for the last 10 years That's now AEO. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go. I mean, I remember talking to um, an in-house client I had years ago about when we first heard about was it the experience filter in Google coming out, which
Yeah.
didn't happen. It became forums. But as soon as I heard about that, I was on it. I was like, you need to go hard on your socials. You need to go hard on video. You need to have an actual search strategy for these things because like there's now going to be a dedicated filter for this. So like you got and that was before ChatGPT was right before it dropped.
Yeah.
So and now AEO and GEO is open to discussion for that where everyone's like wants to know about those things now.
Hmm.
Um, I also had a question for you. So
Lovely.
we talked a little bit about um, organizational design, and I know you've got a lot of experience with recruiting teams and building teams, and that's something you're very good at. So, what does the ideal team makeup for digital teams look like now to have these visibility gates?
There's a lot of different skills required, right? So I think we, if you look at just the SEO team, there's like I talked about, some core skills. Obviously, we need some really technical skills. We need people who are, deeply technical and knowledgeable. Um, and then we need the people who are more, top level, can have these conversations with C-suite, like we just talked about. But then if we're looking at the visibility gates, there's all sorts of other things going on here, all sorts of other competencies. So it's not about just having an SEO team anymore. It's about SEO managers, or then visibility officers, or whatever they're going to be, whatever we're going to be called in the future, aligning people that already exist within the business through this. And if it's a task force, whatever you want to call it, maybe to get going, you need a lot of different people with a lot of different types of backgrounds. Someone who understands social and has that kind of background and experience, and a really good PR people. That digital PR is a massive part of. We talked about brand a lot today. It's the authority building now is a lot more important than it has ever been. So those PR professionals and working with digital PR is obviously very important skills to have in your team. But it depends on what this visibility gates looks like for you as a business to, what kind of content needs to pass through here and what competences do we need. And then going out into the organization and find those and align those to being the people involved in driving the work forward. I know that sounds a little bit fluffy now when I say it, because it just depends so much on like what your organization looks like. I mean, for us, we have a client where they had what I would call like a brand team internally that was not at all aligned to anything else in the business, but they were running the blog on the website, and you can imagine there was loads of pictures, very little text. No, I mean, and this is a big brand in Sweden. I'm not going to mention them by name, but we're at a point now where they're so ingrained in the processes that we have. We got them on board, so now they're actually part of the rest of the it's not a visibility team quite yet, but it's part of like the SEO team, where it sieves through both our SEO professionals as well as the UX and the implementation. It doesn't go live until it's passed through quite a few steps now. And that's so lovely to see. And the results are amazing, obviously, because imagine going from just like blog post that is no content, for crawlers and AI, and now it actually has content. So it's a big difference, obviously. So, yeah, that's just one example of like what that could look like, of just aligning people that's already existing in the business.
I kind of imagine where there's maybe a bit more budget is a bit more like old school advertising teams, where it used to be a mix of PR and design and the marketing people who knew like the tech, the audience and the data side of things, and bringing that into let's talk about the messaging and all that. I feel like we're moving towards more of that, um, multi-skilled advertising team style again, which is I think
Yeah.
super interesting.
Yes, and I have this conversation a lot with my consultants, about being a T-shaped marketer, or, should I go really deep in my career or should I go really broad? And I reckon we need all sorts of different people going forward. But we can't expect everyone to be experts in everything. That's just not going to work. Hence why I'm so passionate about like finding ways to collaborate and bring people together. Because if we could have just one person doing absolutely everything, then great, let's do it. But that's not reality. You can't expect that from one person. Hence why building these relationships and putting structures into place so they're not reliant on relationships only, but structures and the processes. That is what kind of future proofs us working in this way. Yeah.
I think anyone here, I think it happens a lot in Australia too, worked in a small to medium business as the SEO. You have tried to do everything, and most of us nearly died. So we know firsthand it's a terrible idea. Let's not
Yeah.
try and do that again.
Let's not do that. No.
No. And we've got another question here from Anona. I'm so sorry if I butchered that. It's a beautiful name. What separates someone who stays average from someone who becomes visible and trusted?
What's the difference? Sorry, was that the question?
Yes. So yeah, what separates, I guess, a brand that stays kind of average and doesn't get that visibility from someone who becomes visible and trusted by users?
Yeah, I think good old EEAT serves as well here. But I think about the consistency as well. And really, like I talked about earlier, if you understand where as well as we can right now with the data that we can get a hold of, where LLMs are taking information in your industry from places to recommend products or services or whatever you have. If you understand where it's getting that information from or what it says about you, what it says about your competitors, then you'll get a lot of insight into what the difference is and what the gap is, right? And it's probably to do with where you are seen, how other people are talking about you, how if people even are talking about you, and if they're not, and your competitors' brands are being talked about, then maybe that's where you need to start. That's probably a lot of what it is. Sometimes you can have, an amazing service or product, but AI is still not going to like recommend you because they don't have any proof of that, right? So that's one way to think about it. Like, how can we prove that we have a great product? And sometimes you need to, you can't just wait for those reviews to come in. You have to make an effort to like get the word out there. Hence, digital PR if you wish, and all sorts of other things that you can do.
We've already started to see some black hat happening on that front. I've seen
Yeah.
a couple of studies coming through. People like, oh yeah, I easily manipulated this by making up a whole thing, getting it put onto Forbes,
Yeah.
and you're like, that's just reminds me so much of pre-Penguin Panda
Yeah.
SEO.
Those were the days. Yeah, but I think that's always going to happen, especially within, SEO that we work in this field. People are going to find some blackout ways, but it's great. It gives you insights into what works. But now let's just take those insights and do the right thing with that.
Yeah, take those insights and just don't lie.
Yes. Good idea. Good idea.
Good idea. All right, I think that is all of our questions, unless anyone else has anything they want to share through. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it works until it doesn't. Exactly.
Yes, it
That's
does.
that's everything. I do think that it's so funny seeing AEO, GEO come to the forefront. It feels, if you've been in this industry long enough, it feels like those early days of SEO.
Mm-hmm.
But it's sophisticating itself, I guess,
Yes.
at a much faster rate than Google did, and it has the Google roadmap to follow for how to create a more sophisticated version of itself much
Mm.
more quickly. So I think all of these hacks are they're going to work for a minute,
Yeah.
and then it's not going to happen for long.
No, exactly. And
Um,
that's always what we should be striving to do. Just do the honest and the right thing, but you can do more of it and you can expand it and you can, push yourself to do more, but do it just in an honest and transparent way. And also make sure that you have good products and services. That's really where you should start, and then you should be fine.
and keep your humans.
Yes,
Keep your
please do.
humans. We spoke about that before. I think a big differentiating factor on the trust that you were asking about before, Anona. is it's going to be you having the ability to provide humanity in
Yeah,
your products and your service. So
100%.
humans all the way.
Hmm.
All right, so that is a wrap on our first webinar. Thank you, Kristina, for your time, and everyone who joined us tonight. So appreciative that you took the time out. Please go and connect with Kristina on LinkedIn or follow her there. She shares great stuff. She's been doing podcasts, she's publishing articles, and just generally being amazing. So please go and follow her. And if you've enjoyed today's presentation, go and check out Edge of Search, which you can do at edgeofsearch.com. And you can have a look at what we have on for the 2026 conference. It's happening September this year, and we'll be bringing you more original and innovative content just like this. So please go check it out. Early bird tickets are on sale. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Take care.